Hi, Marcia and Susan. It's Joni, and I'm recording this just for you. It's a long story as to why. Um, Now I'm going to put up my slideshow, if it'll cooperate, and I'll start the presentation. So this is my first slide that hopefully you're seeing. Um, I love each individual in this group, and I love our group as a whole. And I started to wonder about the reasons why and thought I would look to astrology to give me clues. Um, Astrologers are able to look at the compatibility between two individuals by looking at their charts, but to look at the compatibility of an entire group of 9 people, there's not really standard method for doing that in astrology. So I kind of made up my own methods and looked for patterns. Because there are so many of us, I wanted to keep, and in the interest of time, I wanted to keep things simple. But before I get to some of the patterns that I was able to find about our group, I have some basic background information I want to share. And it's going to focus on the 4 elements. But as you could see from the reports that I sent you, an astrological birth chart is complicated. It's much more than simply what sign of the zodiac your sun is in. In addition to the sun, there's the moon and 8 other planets. And in astrology, they're generally referred to all as planets, or the 10 planets, and each of your 10 planets is going to be in a specific sign of the zodiac. The planets also are going to be in one of the 12 houses of the zodiac, and the houses show what part of life that planet would impact. There's your rising sign, which, Marcia, for you, it is Scorpio. For Susan, we're not sure because we don't know if you were born at AM or PM. It could be Libra or it could be Taurus if the actual time is correct. But next to the sun and moon, the rising sign or ascendant is the most important thing in your chart that tells you about yourself. It's how you present yourself to the world, whereas your sun is your essence. Sometimes how we present ourselves to others might be a little different than how we really are. There's also the angles that the planets make to one another. These are called aspects. Some aspects, depending on what the degree of the angle is, are more harmonious than others. And last but not least, at least on this list, are elements: fire, earth, air, and water, and that's what I'm going to mostly focus on in this presentation. This shows the chart of no one in our group. It's Barbara Streisand's chart, and I just want to make the point, if you can see my cursor, that this is her sun, which is next to Mercury in the sign of Taurus in the first house, but there's so much else going on. But that's not just true for Barbara Streisand, it's true for each of us. Here I have color-coded the 4 elements: fire, earth, air, and water. This is what's called the natural zodiac, which starts, if you can see my cursor, at around 9 o'clock at Aries. And using the calendar months, you go counterclockwise until you get to the 12th sign of the zodiac, which is Pisces. And the pattern is starting with Aries and going on Taurus, etc., is and the red is fire, green for earth, light blue for air, and dark blue for water. And as you can see, that pattern repeats itself a couple of times. So the 10 planets in your own chart will, by definition, be distributed into one of the various elements. And in your report that I sent you on page 4, it just shows how your planets are distributed among the 4 elements. These happen to be mine. And you can see that I have more planets in water than any of the other elements, and no planets in an earth sign. You can look at your own chart to see what you have. And for the following few slides, I'm going to show you what the different elements signify, how they may manifest. On the left column will be the more positive traits or talents of that element, and on the right will show what can happen if that element is afflicted or overly abundant or out of balance. In other words, too much of a good thing. The fire signs include Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. People have in common that have these signs of being leadership oriented, bold, assertive, passionate, and spontaneous. On the negative end of things, that could lead to being self-centered, aggressive, or impulsive in certain situations, at least. The earth signs are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. These are the builders of the zodiac. They're practical, dependable, reliable, grounded. They have good resource management skills. It can lead to being rigid or overly materialistic. The air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Even though Aquarius is symbolized by the water bearer, it is indeed an air sign. These are the intellectuals of the zodiac. They usually have really good communication skills, excellent social skills. They can at times, depending on the situation, be unpredictable or emotionally detached because they're mostly in their head, which is a strength, but they can come across as emotionally detached. Doesn't mean that they're not feeling the emotions. And then the water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. These tend to be the most sensitive or empathetic signs of the zodiac, compassionate, intuitive, but because they are so sensitive, it can lead to being overly sensitive or emotional because they're soaking up the emotions of others. They're like psychic sponges, and it can lead to moodiness. Which signs are more compatible? If you look at the diagonal of this chart, it shows that planets that are in signs of this, or signs that are in the same element, tend to be compatible with one another. And then below the diagonal in the purple, it shows that air and fire signs tend to be more compatible with each other. And in the green, water and earth signs tend to be more compatible with one another. And here are the members of our group plotted into that color-coded chart that I showed you a little earlier. In fire signs, we have Judy, Melanie, Judy, Marcia, Melanie, and myself. In air signs, in the light blue, we have Peggy, Susan, Anne, and Patricia. And in a water sign, we have Debbie. None of us is in an earth sign, shown in green. which is fine for our purposes. If we were working for Habitat for Humanity or trying to put up a roof for someone, it might be bad that we have very little earth signs among us, but I think we're okay for Zooming purposes. So we are sun sign compatible. 4 are in fire signs, 4 in air, 1 in water. But when we look beyond our sun signs, Debbie is really not the only one to have the influence of the water element in her chart. Each of us has at least one of our inner planets in a water sign. What do I mean by inner planets? Those are the planets, the 5 planets that are most important to show our individual characteristics and personalities. They include the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. So that's what I mean by the inner planets. Each of us has at least one of our 5 inner planets in a water sign, and 3 of us that have fire or air sun signs have 3 of our inner planets in a water sign. And when I look at all of our planets together by element, we do have a plurality of planets in water signs as a group. And I mentioned earlier, even when you go beyond our sun sign and look at all of our planets, very few of us have much of an earth influence in general. Now, why did we end up in Savannah? Why the 10 of us out of all of the people that got the invitation? For this, I looked at our inner planets. These are all of us in the vertical axis, and then the 5 inner planets plus our rising sun going down each column. The thing that I found when I looked at this, the pattern that really jumped out at me that's highlighted in yellow is that most all of us, not everyone, but most all of us have at least one of our inner planets in Sagittarius. And the reason that is important for this presentation is because Sagittarius is the sign of travel, long distance travel, whether it be within the US or within our country or internationally. Sagittarius is the sign of the traveler. Then you might think, oh, well, Peggy, she's always traveling, cruises, well, before the pandemic anyway, cruises, always going to visit her kids and so on. She does not have any of her inner planets nor her rising sign in Sagittarius. But so I looked more closely at her chart, and she's given me her permission to show this. I looked carefully at Peggy's 9th house. The 9th house governs travel. And here, if you can see my cursor, she has her sun, Jupiter, the moon, and Mercury in her 9th house of travel. So she has a lot of activity going on there, which goes along with what we already know about her. What keeps us zooming? Well, for that, I looked in greater detail at Mercury, which is the planet of communication. It's an important planet in our chart, maybe the 3rd most important planet next to the sun and the moon, because it influences how we think and communicate. That's really our connection with other people. It governs that type of energy. Mercury, the planet, travels very closely with the sun. So it's going to be always either in the same sign that your sun is in, or in the sign immediately before or immediately after your sun sign. And as it turns out, 8 of the 9 of us have our Mercury in a water sign. So I thought that was remarkable and worth sharing with you. And this shows that same table I showed you earlier, but looking at more detail at Mercury. And as you can see, we have a great majority of us, a super majority, with a water influence of our Mercury. And with that, I will end.